Welcome once again, everybody, to the famous Patterson Building in downtown Bismarck. The historic Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar is our home for the Legislature Today radio show. We're here Monday through Thursday nights. Don't forget Saturday on the air from 10 a.m. until 12 noon. If you want to keep tabs on what's happening in the legislature now in its 7th or 8th day, I guess, very early in the session, this is the place to do it. GreatPlainsNews.com is a place you can watch us online. And if you miss a show, all the programs are archived there, and also send us questions about what's happening. Busy program for you tonight. We'll give you a rundown on all of that. Want to invite you to join us if you are in Bismarck, Mandan, to the Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar, where it is Wine Down Wednesday. Half-price bottles of wine at the famous Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar. So come on down if you are here. Tonight's program is brought to you by the University of Mary, America's leadership university, and we'll have guests tonight as well from the University of Mary. Today is known as Law Enforcement Day in the legislature, and Dale Wetzel, managing editor for Great Plains News, is here to give us a recap on the day's events in the legislature. Why do they call it Law Enforcement Day, Dale?
They call it Law Enforcement Day because there's a lot of policemen there, a lot of sheriffs, a lot of prosecutors, a lot of police officers. It's essentially a day for the law enforcement community to come to the Capitol and essentially make its opinions known of a variety of proposals and maybe have some proposals of their own.
I was struck by the fact that at the west entrance of the Capitol, right off the parking lot where the legislators enter the building and park, there was a sobering sight. The Subaru Forester, a small SUV vehicle that was the vehicle that was carrying the Deutscher family.
Yeah, there's nothing like walking past a coffin on your way to work, and that's essentially what it was. On a trailer is a completely crushed small SUV, which was carrying the Deutscher family last July when they were driving from West Fargo to Bismarck. They were westbound, and they collided head-on with a drunken driver who was driving east in the same lane. He was in the wrong lane of the interstate highway. It was a head-on collision. And the car, I mean, I took several pictures of it. There are pictures on the Great Plains Examiner website. And the front of it is just obliterated. And you look at the car and you think, my goodness, this is a coffin. I mean, it's like looking at the USS Arizona in Pearl Harbor. And it's just, I watched a lot of people walk by and look at the car and watch their reactions, and people were stunned once they realized what it was and what it was doing there. And there's no other way to describe it. I've never seen anything like that at the Capitol during the legislative session since I've been over there, and I've been over there for almost 30 years. I mean, you literally had a crime scene sitting less than 10 feet away from where people walk in the door to go to work.
I, because of your good reporting, knew that it was there and took a walk out there and had the fortune of meeting the father of Allison Deutscher, who literally was at the vehicle at the same time, and I was making small talk with him as a fellow citizen to say, man, this is something. He said, well, my daughter was killed in this car.
I don't see how he could look at it.
He saw it for the first time Friday, he told me, and the reason he did, he knew it was going to be here for this day, that he planned to be here to interact with legislators, and he said he wanted to see it ahead of time to make sure that he had that behind him. He said that the parents of Allison's husband, Aaron, have not yet been able to even look at the vehicle, and I can understand why. What about took my breath away, I think, what any parent is seeing a car seat back there. I mean, you look at that car seat and think of the trauma of that 18-month-old little girl. And
I could barely look at it, to be honest with you, and I don't know the Deutschers at all.
Yeah, so anything other, obviously that dominated the discussion in the hallways today, and we started talking about the legislation and any other things that
we should mention another tragedy that happened, or I should say atrocity, that happened less than 2 days after that. There were a couple of youngsters sleeping in a tent in a campground near Lake Metagoshi, and they were run over. Their tent was run over by a pickup. Was driven by a gentleman who the authorities say he was drinking. He's charged with manslaughter and reckless endangerment. He goes on trial in April, as according to the schedule. And his parents, the young men's parents, this was a 9-year-old boy and a 5-year-old boy, and their parents were in the Capitol today, talking to folks about the DUI laws, and their names are Juan Reese and Sandy Hernandez. And they talked at some length about what had happened to their family, what they would like to see happen, in terms of changes to laws. And it was just kind of amazing, the poise that these people had. I couldn't hardly believe it. I mean, Mr. Ruiz was standing there and talking in a very even voice. You know, you could tell that he was dying inside, but he was able to relate his experience with, I thought, amazing clarity and emotion. And the only time that they got a little, they started to cry was when I asked them, what were your sons like? And of course they wanted to talk about what their sons like to do, and they like to fish. They were the day before they died, they went and were being towed by a boat on a inner tube, and they were riding a jet ski. They were swimming in the lake, and this was cool stuff for them. And that morning, the morning after the following morning, which was interrupted, of course, by the atrocity, they were going to go fishing, and it was too much.
We're going to be hearing from the parents later in the program, so I encourage you to stay tuned. Both of those incidents are one of the reasons our guest here is with us tonight to talk about enhancing the DUI laws. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our guests, and we'll get rolling with another hour of the Legislature Today.
Kim Koppelman is a state legislator from West Fargo. He's a member of the U.S. House. He tried. A member of the North Dakota House. Excuse me. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
He's a member of the North Dakota House. He is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. He is a former president of the Council of State Governments. Was it president or chairman?
Chairman, actually.
Excuse me. Former chairman of the Council of State Governments, which is a multi-state organization that represents legislatures, the judiciary, and the executive branch. It's a kind of a multidisciplinary group. And he is the primary sponsor of a bill in the legislature that I suppose its most notable feature, that what people talk about the most, is that it has a mandatory jail sentence for first offense drunken drivers. You have to be in the Huskow for at least 4 days if you are arrested and convicted of driving under the influence. And Representative Koppelman, why do you think that that's the correct approach?
Well, Dale and Scott, first of all, it's good to be with you. And I don't think there's any magic to a particular formula or a particular solution. But I think this is a good start. And when we looked at this idea of increasing and enhancing the drunk driving laws in North Dakota, we looked at a lot of different ideas. In fact, I began by visiting with law enforcement people from around the state, and particularly in the region where I live and represent in eastern North Dakota, but also around the state with the Attorney General's office, ultimately with state's attorneys around the state, the prosecutors who prosecute these crimes, and eventually with the Governor's office. Both the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office offered great technical assistance, and that was very helpful. So you asked the question of why do I think this is the right approach. I think it's very important to send a message to folks who are first offenders. And the problem that I see, and is the more people that I talk to, whether it's law enforcement folks or lay people about this, they say, we've got a problem with our culture in North Dakota when it comes to drunk driving. Because typically the response to a DUI is either a wink and a nod or a sigh of relief saying, gee, I'm glad it wasn't me that got caught. And yet when the kind of tragedies, atrocities that occur, like the ones you were describing, Dale, then we're all horrified. We're outraged. And those dots just don't connect. We have to figure out a way to say, okay, how do we deal with a first offender in a way that, we don't want to lock them up forever, of course, but we want to say this is a serious thing, and you have a choice to make. You're at a crossroads here. It's embarrassing, it's inconvenient, it's costing you some money, and in our case, it would put you in the inside of a jail cell for a few days. We think that would help send the message to really force people to look at that situation and say, is this the road I want to go down? Do I want to continue doing this? Do I maybe someday want to run the risk of being the one that is the cause of one of these kinds of atrocities? Or do I want to change the way I deal with drinking and driving?
Here we have with us to discuss a possible new DUI law. We have Mr. Aaron Bierst, who is a former prosecutor in Stutzman County and Cass County. He is the legal counsel for the North Dakota Association of Counties. And we have Mr. Mike Wrighton, who is the Assistant Chief of Police of West Fargo. He started his law enforcement career in 1984. in Castleton. And we'll talk about this a little later. This isn't related to DUI specifically, but one of the reasons that Mr. Wrighton is here is he's going to testify tomorrow on legislation that would raise the speeding fines and fines for traffic violations in North Dakota. They've been the same for some time. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Wrighton tells the story, and I think he's going to tell it tomorrow at the legislative hearing, that when he wrote his first ticket as a Castleton police officer, the fine for that ticket was the same as it is today, and this was in 1984. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Mr. Wrighton, can you just talk about what sort of practical challenges would be brought about if there is a mandatory jail sentence for DUI offenders?
Well, the sheriffs have been speaking about the jail capacity or jail population at this time, and that the population is running near capacity most days. If we do go to a type of sentencing where there is mandatory jail time, there is going to be some issues on space and where we're going to house these folks. We need to be looking at the bill, and some discussions have been made as far as other types of alternative housing, whether it's house arrest with electronic monitoring, whether it's a halfway house type setting. We're going to need to put out all of the possibilities on the table and work through this to figure out a solution.
Do you think that house arrest with electronic monitoring would prove to be the kind of deterrent that one might want?
We really think that putting somebody in a restrictive environment is going to get the message to them that if you go out and violate the DUI laws in North Dakota, we're going to restrict your freedoms. And if we end up having to do that through electronic monitoring, so be it. It's certainly not as restrictive as spending time in jail. It may not be as large an impact, but I think it will be an impact on these individuals to be, in essence, babysitted by the state because their behaviors were inappropriate.
Mr. Bierst, I wanted to ask you a question from a prosecutor's standpoint. If we have a law in North Dakota that says thou shalt spend 4 days in jail if you have a DUI, if you have a conviction for DUI, are you going to have more DUI trials, and what is that going to do to the justice system in North Dakota?
Yeah, Dale, thanks again, and Scott for having us on the show. I think it's pretty clear anytime you increase those minimum mandatories, there will have to be an effect, which you will be looking at more trials. You will be looking at increased jail costs. But I got to be honest, as I'm sitting here looking at this postcard with the two young boys that were lost, I mean, that's a significant policy decision, but it seems to pale in comparison to the loss that this father had. But clearly, anytime you increase those minimum mandatories, there will be an impact to the prosecutor ranks, to the law enforcement ranks, to the court system, and then ultimately the jail.
I'm curious, how many first-time offenses of DUIs were there, for instance, last year? Do we know the number?
Yeah, we have about 4,000. 6,500 people in North Dakota are arrested for DUI a year, and about a third of those are multi-offenders. So we're pegging the number at about 4,000 first-time DUI offenders.
To what extent do you think that number might be reduced if there is the prospect of a mandatory jail sentence, and that fact is well known?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. What would be the deterrent effect? Clearly, if you do more cases in jail, that's going to cost money. The counter is, at the end of the day, if more people get the message that they shouldn't get behind the wheel, that's what we want to convey. And ultimately, in the long term, there'll be some cost savings. We don't know that. We just don't know that. I mean, this isn't a unique problem to North Dakota. It's nationwide. I think North Dakota has had some very difficult cases and is increasing and trending in the wrong way that most of the states in the other part of the country are trending downward.
I was curious of the math. Let's get positive and say, the deterrent cuts it in half, right? So it goes to 2,000 first-time offenders, 2,000 times 4 days. I mean, are there even that many, places to have prisoners put their head on the pillow? Is it doable? Is it manageable? I mean, you don't know when they're going to happen, and I mean, there's a lot of variables there. But I mean, is the jail space available?
Under the current circumstances, if you were talking putting 4,000 people in prison for 4 days or in jail for 4 days,
the jail space in many counties who run the jails would not be available. So there would have to be some sort of separate, or else you would have to move the system in a different direction and stop putting people in jail for other crimes. There would have to be a trade-off, at least initially. But that's why the legislature is debating this right now. But counties would bear the cost of that.
The folks who are in the county jails, what are they in there for generally?
Well, the county jail structure picks everybody up from DUI all the way to homicide. When the homicide cases and the rape cases are completed, then they usually go off to the penitentiary that the state obviously funds. So everybody is in those county jails, but large amounts of those are small misdemeanors that are serving specific time. Most of them are repeat offenders on other crimes where the judge continues to ratchet up the time in jail.
We have, I mentioned earlier, but we'll introduce them. Rachel Brash is the executive director of the University of Mary Worldwide, and I'm just fascinated by that title, and we'll be exploring exactly what that means. And we have Dr. Jim Jones, the Vice President for Continuing and Professional Education at the University of Mary. Greetings, Ms. Brash and Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Dr. Jones.
Thank you.
And I'd like to start with you, Ms. Brash. What does the Executive Director of the University of Mary Worldwide do?
Whatever needs to be done.
All right. That's the right answer.
Well, we do a couple different things in our area. First, we do accelerated programs.
And what does that mean, accelerated programs?
We do undergraduate and graduate programs. We've been in this state for quite a long time. We've been in Fargo for a long time. We have a large population of students there. We're here in Bismarck. We're down in Kansas City. We're in Billings, Montana. And we do both mostly business programs. We also have nursing, counseling, and education programs.
Can you tell me some of the business programs you do?
Yeah. We have an MBA program, a Master of Science in Strategic Leadership, a Master of Project Management, and then we also have a variety of undergraduate degrees in accounting, management, and business administration, along with HR as well.
What's the job market for your graduates?
We primarily see students who have been out in the workforce for a while. These are working adults. So they've either jumped right in, maybe taken a few transfer credits somewhere else, and they've never completed their degree. And so these people are looking to move up in their field. They're looking to change their field. They're looking to do something different.
So there are people that have jobs. They just want maybe different ones or better ones.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Okay. Does an accelerated program mean that you can finish a program of instruction more quickly than normal?
Absolutely.
And can you tell me how long would it take me to get an MBA at the University of Mary?
MBA can be completed in 18 to 20 months, start to finish.
How long is that usually? How long does it usually? What's the normal time frame for an MBA?
That's normally, if you do like a resident program, those more traditional based programs, they can be easily 2 years.
Okay.
What we really focus on is application and the ability to still keep up with those other obligations in their life.
And who are your instructors for these programs that you mentioned?
People that are out there working in the field. Our students are at the point where they know the value of a tuition dollar. They know that if they want somebody who's going to tell them, this is how it works, this is what my experience is. What's your experience? Bring that into the classroom. Tell me what you think.
Dr. Jones, what do you do as Vice President for Continuing and Professional Education?
Everything that Rachel tells me to do.
All right. At least we know who's running things now.
Actually, I probably am the strategist for the organization and try to figure out the strategic process that we're going to go through. Trying to develop relationships between businesses and ourselves, between other educational entities and ourselves. My job is to make sure that whatever we're doing in an excellent way for our students and meeting the needs of our students. And our students can come from all walks of life and have all different kinds of needs.
When someone says to me, I'm in charge of strategic direction or that sort of thing, my natural follow-up is, what does that mean? And it seems like it's hard to quantify. Could you give us some concrete examples of what that means?
Well, our strategic plan that we developed is based on the university strategic plan. We have 5 goals, and those 5 goals include sustainability, financial sustainability, enrollments, utilizing our values within the university. All of that stuff that is included into the university strategic plan is included in our strategic plan. We're an image of the university, and while you brought up the worldwide process, I think this is a good time to interject that. The worldwide name comes because we tried to identify ourselves with so many things, the adult student, the professional student, but really and truly, we're the University of Mary, and we're the University of Mary first and foremost. So because of that, we developed a title, the University of Mary Worldwide, because we are worldwide. We have a campus in Rome. We have several campuses in the United States and several different states right now, as Rachel talked about, in Kansas and Billings, Montana. We're moving into Miles City, Montana. We're moving into Alexandria, Minnesota. And these programs are really and truly based on what the student need is in that particular area that we're moving into. And it varies based on the market we're in, the type of students we have, and what they might be looking for in terms of education.
One of the interesting bills I've seen introduced in the last couple of days is a bill to repeal state regulation of tanning salons, which I thought was pretty interesting because the bill, when it was passed, it was lobbied for by Heidi Heitkamp, who, of course, is now our U.S. Senator, and she was a private citizen and lawyer at the time, and she was lobbying for regulation of tanning salons. And now there is a bill been introduced, it's in the House, that would repeal essentially that entire chapter. And that's something you don't see very often in the legislature is, okay, let's have this law and let's just get rid of it. Senator Campbell, do you have any particular goals that you want to pursue in the legislature?
Similar to Senator, less regulation, big thing. I'm probably not the guy that's going to introduce a dozen bills. If anything, less bills. I scrutinize things and challenge a lot of the people that have come. I think cavet emptor in Latin means less government involvement. I'm a big fan of that. Property tax relief, or of all tax reliefs, not just property, whether it's income tax or sales tax. I'm a proponent of all of those. I agree with the senator here that if they have the money, they'll spend it. So I'm a proponent of less government, the better. Kind of like the Reagan years. I think if we can put the money back in the business or back in our communities and our districts, I think we can spend it more wisely at home than in Bismarck.
Dr. Jones, any questions for Senator Campbell, Senator Armstrong?
I don't think I have any. I'm very impressed with why they want to do what they're doing in the legislature. I think it has to come from the heart, and if you know what your heart needs, then you're probably going to follow it. So,
Dr. Jones, you mentioned that you were quite involved in politics a while ago. Why are you not involved in it anymore? Or why did you get out of it, if that's the correct way to describe it?
I think I got smarter. I just didn't find that the avenue that I needed to go down. I graduated Morehead State. I was accepted into UND Law School because that's what I was going to be, and decided I didn't want to be an attorney and went a completely different direction. But service to everyone that you come in contact with. I'm at a stage in my life where I think I have to give back. So I'm trying to give back, and I think these young gentlemen will be doing the same thing through their process.
And I'm curious, too, from both of you, obviously, with the notion we talked about the University of Mary trying to inspire, students and citizens to engage in the public service mainly as a counter to the idea that somehow public service is, a dirty thing, or it's a bad thing to be a politician. Did you guys consider that when you were weighing the options about whether or not to enter the public service, that somehow adding the label politician might be bad for business, or might just be more headaches than it was worth? Senator Campbell first.
Well, you know what our approval rating is of our Washington, D.C. boys? It's like 9%, I believe, if I can even believe that. I read somewhere. So that's kind of disheartening. And I guess with some of the, with Romney and Rick Berg, some of the reasons I think that people are if you're successful, it's almost you have to be apologetic. So that's kind of disheartening as well. The American dream may be lost a little bit for a big part of our country. So if you focus on that, yeah, you probably would say, why am I going into this? But I'm trying to I'm the eternal optimist, I guess, in our business, in our plan, and our group in the district. And I'm going to try to change that, maybe bring back the American dream and less government involvement and more bring the money back home to whether it's North Dakota or Grafton District 19 is what I'm going to be a proponent of.
Senator Armstrong?
When I was saying, and it's one of the reasons I always ended. I've left Dickinson numerous times. I always end up back there. I always say, if you want to be anonymous, move to a big city. Part of the benefit of living in a small town is you should get involved, whether it's your fire department, whether it's the Optimist Club, whether it's city commission, county commission, zoning boards. This avenue was available to me because of my life circumstances. I was already a defense attorney, so I probably had a dirty word slapped on my name enough. So politics was no big deal, but for me, and it's you go to your strengths, and hopefully I can do a good job for my constituents down here. But I just really believe when you live in a small community, you need to get involved in something. That's part of the benefit and beauty of living in them.
How does your background as a lawyer and as a business person affect how you analyze issues, how you look at things?
I suppose you'd have to ask who's on the other side of the table to that question. I mean, good ideas can become bad law in a hurry. And that's how I approach everything I read. Is this a good idea? Yes. Is it a bad law? Yes or no. I mean, you need to words are important in statute, incredibly important, because people get paid a lot of money to attack those statutes, whether it's civil, family, or anything. So I hope my background as a lawyer helps in statutory construction as much as anything.
Senator Campbell, how do you bring to bear your own background as a business person, as a farmer, to the issues that have nothing to do with either one?
I would hope that my experience in businesses, we've been in the restaurant business, trucking business, farming, banking, been unsuccessful at a lot of them, but I've gained a lot of experience, I think, in my 53 years of being here, and I would hope that I can maybe make those useful so far. Kelly and I are in the taxation committee together, and I think we've already worked together on some things with our experience and knowledge and the experiences that we've had of living the life of on the other side of it, paying the taxes. Now we're basically making tax law with our committee. So it's been fun, and I think I can bring those experiences and maybe try to tailor some of the laws to what we see on the other end of it.
We have a minute left. What you two gentlemen, what have your constituents been telling you so far? Anything in particular that's remarkable?
I have not had, most of the constituents I've talked to at this point have been my friends and family, and they've been very supportive.
And they tell you you're doing a fine job.
Well, of course they do.
Oh, right. How about you, Senator Campbell?
Through Facebook, and I do a weekly update with a group email, and it's been very good, but of course I'm only hearing from the ones that are supporting me. Maybe in another month or 60 more days, I'll hear from the ones that don't like me, and I'll change my tune.
We've been talking this evening to Senator Kelly Armstrong from Dickinson, a Republican, Senator Tom Campbell from Grafton, a Republican, and a gentleman from the University of Mary, Mr. Jim Jones, Dr. Jim Jones, I should say, the Vice President for Continuing and Professional Education at the University of Mary, who is our sponsor for this evening, this second hour of our show. America's Leadership University. Dr. Jones, thank you. We'll see you again down the road. Many Wednesdays. Senator Campbell, Senator Armstrong, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. You'll no doubt be hearing more from all of these individuals in this legislative session, and we certainly look forward to that here on the Legislature Today radio show. Monday through Thursday evenings. If you miss a program, you can always catch it archived at GreatPlainsNews.com. GreatPlainsNews.com. Check out that website, and remember to join us Monday through Thursday nights, plus Saturdays, 10 a.m. to noon. And thank you for listening to another hour of the Legislature Today radio show on 550 K-Fire, AM 1100 The Flag, and AM 1090 Talk Radio, The Flag in the Bucket.